I was a computer programmer, and it seemed like even if I changed jobs, it just was Dilbert everywhere I went. And I started to get interested. I'd always been interested in politics, and it seemed to me that the people I knew in politics who had the most control over the quality of their work and the working conditions they worked under were people who were lawyers. So I started thinking about going to law school. And then a really pivotal event happened. Everybody in my generation can remember where they were when they heard about the Challenger blowing up. And I'm no exception. I was standing in my cubicle at work when I heard about it, and found out in the news reports a couple days later that the engineers who had been building the rockets for the Challenger had tried to warn their managers that it was too risky to fly that day. And they had actually called a meeting with their management, and they had begged them not to fly because it was too cold, the O-rings would be too brittle, and they didn't know what would happen. They didn't know if the O-rings would hold. And their managers told them, take off your engineer hat and put on your management hat. We have to make this launch. And the managers refused to cancel the launch. And it flew the next day, and for a few seconds it looked like things were going to be all right. And then the explosion happened. And these engineers who had been at the top of their profession, and in those days everybody wanted to work for NASA, they were at the top of the profession, the pinnacle of their profession. They had done everything they could to save these 7 people's lives, and they'd been utterly powerless to save them. And at that moment, when I learned that story, I realized that this myth that we've got in this country, that if we all just individually compete with each other and we all just climb the ladder of success, that someday, if we climb high enough, we'll have the power to make things right, that's all just a myth. That the only way we're really going to have the power to make things right is if we work together. And that's what sent me off to law school, was to learn about what does employment law look like in this country, and how can we make the workplace humane so that people have a voice in the work that they do, and so when they're warning their managers that something is terribly wrong, that they actually are listened to. And that's what motivated me to go to law school. And that's what motivates me to do the work I do now. I actually don't practice law right now. I do keep my license up because it does come up in our workplace. But what I do is I work for a small entrepreneurial business that develops training on work-life balance issues for employers who want to do things like implement telecommuting or implement flexible scheduling. There's training for the managers and there's training for the employees. And we put those things in an online self-paced format, and then people can go through the course at their own pace. And that's our business, is providing those kinds of trainings to employers, which is great because the employees get more flexibility and more autonomy, and the employers save money. Every study about flexible work practices shows that they save money. So it's a win-win for everybody. And sometimes employment law issues come up when we're writing those courses, and that's where my legal background comes in handy, so I keep my license up to date, so I am current on those issues. Paid for by Ann Nolan for Congress. I'm Ann Nolan, and I approved this message.